All right, so today we're going to be talking about tape measures. Now, these are the four tape measures that I currently own. Tape measures come in a lot of different varieties, sizes, purposes, what you want to use them for. Most of the tape measures that I use, both personally and professionally, are kind of rolling tape measures like these that sit in some type of housing that pull out and auto retract. There are different kinds of tape measures. There are obviously rulers and yardsticks and meter sticks and things of that nature. There's also what I see welders and pipe fitters use a lot. I don't know what the technical term for it is off the top of my head, but basically it's like a little block basically, and it folds out longer and longer into a big long solid stick. That is something that I don't have any experience with, but that is another form of tape measure that is used widely in the trades. This one here is my personal at-home one, and these three are both in and out of use professional ones. So let's go through each one and kind of see what they look like and what they do and their pros and cons. All right, first up we've got, this is the Milwaukee 16-foot magnetic. This is what I use professionally. This is what I use pretty much day in and day out. Milwaukee does make a good variety of different types of measuring tapes. But the thing for me professionally, the biggest thing is this magnetic tip. For me, for professional use, I will not use a tape measure without a magnetic tip. And this does two things. One, it sticks to metal that's maybe far away. I do a lot of industrial work, so most things are metal. But the second, and probably honestly the bigger purpose of a magnetic tip is you can go fishing with it. So if you drop a nut or a bolt and you're up high or you're far away, you can come down and pick something up and let it pull back to you. And that's a big thing for me, is a magnetic tip. The other thing for me that I really professionally and personally that I am all about is double-sided. I don't understand measuring tapes that are not double-sided. I don't understand why you wouldn't make a double-sided tape measure. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, we'll print on this side, but what if I, for whatever reason, I have to do it like this, backwards, you know? I don't understand why you wouldn't have a tape measure that's double-sided. It just seems silly to me. So it's got to be a double-sided measuring tape. Now, obviously, I'm in the U.S., so we're using the imperial system, and things are in inches and, of course, feet. I'm not a framer. I'm not a big person on the type of framing stuff. I also don't use the architectural scale. But that is something that this 16-foot Milwaukee tape measure does have. Now, if you're wondering, architect scale, framers marks, what do those mean? Well, let's go through a few things that maybe you do or don't know about tape measures to use them more efficiently and in a wider variety of uses. Because like most tools, there are certain things the tool is made for and designed to do. So let's go over a few of those things. So the first, I think the biggest thing that people don't kind of understand is the head of the tape measure is actually designed to both go in and come out. It's designed that way on purpose. And it has to do when you're putting it up against pressure to give you more accurate measurement, and the same thing if you're hooking it on something, because that will change the dimensions on how you're measuring something. So this little bit at the end is designed to move to give you a more accurate measurement, whether you're pressing it against something or you're pulling it against something to get a measurement. This is supposed to move, so you always want to remember that. The second thing is, the biggest one for, I think a lot of people don't understand, is most tape measures, if you can see this here, now this is a little worn off because like I said, I use this pretty much every day at work. This is about 3 3/8, and it gives you a metric measurement of 79 millimeters. And what that's telling you is that the dimensions of the tape measure from this end to this end are either 3 3/8 inches or was it 79 millimeters. And the purpose of that is say you're measuring something inside, right? Like a door frame, for example. You've got one end of the door frame here, and you've got another end of the door frame here. Basically, what you could do is you would line up the end, wherever it ends up. We'll just use 9 for a solid number here, and we'll lock it into place. All right, so say it ends up at 9, and that's the dimensions. From the front of the tape measure here to the back of it, it stops at 9, right? excuse me, what that's telling me is it's 9 plus the 3 3/8 dimensions of this tape measure. So if you're measuring something inside that's tight, you can put it up here on this side with the end of the tape measure, and you can use the butt of the tape measure, and that will give you a number. So that would be 12 3/8 inches. So this, from this end here to this end here, we know because it stops right on the 9-inch mark that this total distance is 12 3/8 inches. And that's the thing that I think most people, well, people who don't use tape measures every single day of their life probably don't know. The other thing is, and you can get, some tape measures are going to be very basic, right? And they're just going to give you, just numbers, just inch markers, or if you're using a metric tape measure, you're going to give you centimeter markers, yada, 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 yada. But most tape measures that are worth their salt, obviously give you footage markers. That's kind of a no-brainer, why wouldn't you? But the other big thing is going to be these red numbers. If you notice, the red numbers on tape measures are all in multiples of 16. And the reasons for that is stud framing anytime making studs for a wall are supposed to be 16 inches center to center. So if you were a framer, for say, and you wanted to do measurements or whatever, well, 32, then there's 16. If you're going to go from 32, well, there's 48, and so on and so forth. And that's what those red numbers, or numbers that are outlined in red, mean. Another big thing for tape measures is there's a locking mechanism. Most modern tape measures have a locking mechanism. I don't honestly think I've ever encountered one that didn't have a locking mechanism. So it's obviously pretty simple. Pull it out, you want it a certain distance, push it down, it locks into place. Some tape measures, and I don't own any, because I'm not really a big fan of it, are auto lock. So basically you'd pull it out, and without touching anything, it would lock itself into place. And then there would be a little button instead of this little lever here, and that would release it back in. I've used auto locks every now and then when I was working with somebody else's tools. Wasn't a huge fan of it, but I'm not against it. So that is another feature. A big one for me is a finger stop on the bottom. So I don't have to use my thumb at all. Pull it out, and then there's just a light finger stop. So I let go, I don't have to totally, remove my finger or anything, but a finger stop at the bottom. So if for whatever reason I don't want to lock it into place, if I don't think it's going to be there for a while, or I'm just like, I'm pulling it out, or especially if you're doing like a long distance, because you don't want to be like long distance, lock, move your hand, unlock, a long distance, lock, and as you keep going, you got that nice finger thing at the bottom, so you just go boom, 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 and it's so much easier. Now let's talk about standout. Standout is basically the distance at which, if you pull a tape measure out, how long it will stay erect before it collapses in. Now, if you don't use a tape measure every day and you're using it kind of lightly, home use every once in a while, standout's probably not going to be that big of a consideration. But if you work with a tape measure on the regular, whether you're in a manufacturing plant or out in the trades or whatever you do with a tape measure, standout can be very important. Because sometimes you're going to have to reach a very, very long distance, and I'm only at 5 foot because that's the corner of my shop, but you might have to reach a very long distance where you're doing a measurement over open air, or you're trying to reach something. Or like I said at the beginning, if you're trying to use a magnetic tip to fish something, you might want to have a good long standout. Now, this 16-foot tape measure, I think, has like an 8-foot standout. Usually they'll advertise it when you're going to buy a tape measure, whatever it might be. But standout is an important factor for some people. Look, kind of a minor thing would be belt clips. This Milwaukee one's got a nice wire belt clip and lanyard holes. This one has a little thing if you want to slide something in here for lanyard. If you're working, say, an iron, or you're constantly in the air in a harness, you might want something that has a lanyard so you can attach it. So if you drop it, it catches right there. Or if you're working, especially if you're working in the air and you don't want to have all kinds of like tool storage on your person, you could just have it on the lanyard, pull it up. All right, I got this measurement, cool, and then just basically just let it go, and it would swing to your side, and you can pick it back up without having to put it back in or whatnot. So those are kind of the basics of any tape measure. Now, like I said, this is the one I use professionally day in and day out, and it's a 16-footer. Now, I used to use this Milwaukee 25-foot boy, but the biggest thing it came down to The biggest issue, and it's not the fault of the tool, the biggest issue that I had was just the general size, right? So obviously 25-foot tape measure is going to be a lot bigger, a lot bulkier, basically in all dimensions. And the thing for me was basically in the morning, you know, I get my tools out, and if I wasn't doing, you know, just a wire pull, I was working on basically almost anything else that needed any type of work, I'd pull out my tape measure, and this would come out of my bag, whatever, go in my pocket. Then it would just sit, you know, out of my pocket. It's such this big, bulky thing. And when you're up on ladders, or if you're wearing a fall arrest or fall restraint harness, this can really kind of get in the way. So again, that's not a fault of the tool. It's just a bigger tape measure, and it was just bulkier. That's why I went to a 16-footer. For me, it was also that I wasn't measuring stuff over 16 foot very regularly. So I decided to go to a smaller tape measure because I was only measuring things maybe at most 10, 12, maybe like 14 foot usually. You know, length of conduit's only about 10 foot. So I don't really needed 16 foot. But I do keep this with me in my tool storage professionally. The other reason why I got rid of this boy was, well, you see this little chip in here. I happened to accidentally drop it off of a 45-foot boom lift in a heating and air conditioning facility straight onto concrete. So that chipped off and doesn't really retract the best anymore. The around here, the 6-inch get a little nick there, and yeah, so it's still in my toolbox. I honestly don't know why. I guess because keep it in case of emergencies. Because this one is a little beat up, but it is a 25-footer. But the actual, if I need an actual 25-foot tape measure for work, I'd probably bring in, boom, this Klein Tools 25-foot magnetic fish tape. I keep calling them fish tapes. They're not fish tapes. Fish tapes are what you use to push through electrical conduit to pull wire with. These are tape measures. That's what these are. Excuse me. Now, like I said, this one is magnetic. It's got a magnetic tip. It is double-sided. Got white on the back. Got a belt clip. Got a little bit of a lanyard hole here. It does, what is its dimensions? Right there, you can see, this one you can see a little bit clearer, 3 3/8. This one says 86. So what was this one? This one says 79. So maybe it's 3 1/8. Like I said, it's kind of rubbed off, so I can't really see it. Personally, in professional use, I don't really use that kind of distance from here to here very often, but on occasion. So, but this one, like I said, this one's got 3 3/8, 86 millimeters from this end to this end if you were measuring an inside distance from here to the back of your tape measure. This one's got some weight to it. I mean, it is a weighty, weighty boy. This one is nice and light and nimble. This one's all right, but even in comparison to this Klein Tools one, this one is a lot lighter than this. And I don't know what that factor is. Maybe it's, you know, even this clip has, you know, this is a big full metal clip. This is just a little wire clip. And I'm sure there's a lot of other factors that would cause it to be much heavier, but this doesn't have a finger stop per se. This is a button as opposed to just touching the actual tape measure. So pull it out, and then I can put my finger down on this. Don't dislike it. I would always prefer to have a be able to physically touch the tape if I wanted to stop it. The thing with this one reason why I keep this in my box, my big rolling tote, because I do not like the lock. The lock is super tight, and maybe I just got like a bad one. I don't know. There's a good friend of mine that I work with. He has one. He uses it all the time. He doesn't seem to have any problem with it. But for me, it was like I'd measure out, go wherever I'm going to, and then I don't want to keep that measurement, so I'd lock it in place. But I'd be like, just to physically get it to stop. And then it's kind of the same to release it. It's kind of tough to release it. So it just wasn't easy. It's really, really tight. Didn't move very well for me. And the other thing on top of this, and this is maybe be a bit of a picky issue, was the amount of speed it returns with. Excuse me, bump the camera there. Like it's coming in hard and fast. Like I'd be scared, especially if I was measuring something really, really far and I'd let it in, I'd be like, whoop, and it would really, oof. Now you can always slow that down if you have a finger press. You can put your finger on here and slow it down. But it just, yeah, it works. It certainly does. It's got a magnetic tip, all that jazz. But yeah, wasn't a huge fan of this. Another thing to consider when you're doing tape measures is the size of the head. How big this clip is. Does it have a top latch? Does it have how wide is it? Some of these are extraordinarily wide, and they can kind of vary in what they look like. These are all kind of sort of smaller. I think this one's kind of the smallest one, but they make some that are like super. They go all the way to the edge of the tape measure. And different people doing different type of work, maybe that'd be good for them. But for me personally, was not a fan of that. Now, the biggest reason why I keep this one somewhat handy, and Klein Tools makes electrical tools. It initially started, as working for linemen, things of that nature. But the biggest reason why I keep this around, and if you own one of these, you know exactly what I'm going for, and that is right here. This has multipliers for different conduit bending degrees. Basically, what you need to multiply by how much the pipe will shrink per inch of offset. And then it also has this phase table, which if you're an electrician, especially this part, you really should not need any help with. But if you're in a pinch and you don't remember, that'll help out. So that is that. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, this one doesn't have it, but these Milwaukee's do, is an architect scale. This little thing on the back, focus that in there, architectural scale. On this bottom ridge, see if I can't get this in the focus, there we go. Bottom ridge, it's not normal, like measurements. This is 1/4 scale, and on this end it says 1/8 scale. This is for blueprints, and you'll get a blueprint and it'll have like a size or whatever, and then in the legend it'll tell you what the scale is. 1/8 inch equals 1 foot, or 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, yada yada yada. Here's the thing: if you're gonna do blueprints on the regular, which I don't, I've used blueprints every now and then. If you're going to use blueprints on the regular, you should get an architectural scale ruler, which is like a little triangular ruler, and each side has a different like ratio scale on it. Because this, I just personally can't imagine like, oh, I need to put this on the blueprints and measure here to here. Just seems ridiculous to me, and a really good way to mess up your tape measure real quick. So like I said, this is the one I use professionally every day. I just keep this one, actually, because the journeyman that I work with, who's my mentor, he seems to lose tape measures like it's his job. So I keep this around just in case he's missing one. And I keep this one in case I need a 25-foot fish tape. Now, the one I use at home is this Crescent Lufkin Shock Force 16-foot one. The internet was kind of raving about this, and I got to be honest, I kind of just bought into the hype a little bit. This one is not magnetic. I'm not at home. I'm not really fishing for material, and I'm not usually around a lot of metal. It also does not have a finger grip. It does have a lanyard point, but it is double-sided. I would not buy a tape measure if it was not double-sided. I absolutely refuse to do that. So this is supposed to be like high vis. That's the whole thing. Despite the fact that it's black, apparently it's supposed to be easy to read in all types of light levels. So if you're working in something that's really, really dark area, apparently it's very easy to read. Now, again, at home, I don't find myself going to be in that situation very often, but perhaps. Again, it's got a normal locking mechanism, just like anything else does. Comes back in. This has kind of like a coarse grading here, really deep on the bottom, not very big on the top. Sorry if there's a train going by. Sorry if that's annoying. And it's got a solid metal clip, pretty solid right now. I'm not too loose, but it's just kind of whatever. So that is what I work with. Let me know what kind of tape measure do you use. Got any questions about tape measures? I'm not an expert by any means, but I do use tape measures on the regular. So, all right, I will talk to you guys later.